don't have to calculate anything. Only one sample problem I'll just show you. That is your, say, you can say the class quiz that will be asked during your during the lecture. You'll have to answer it, but that will not require a very high-end calculators. By hand you can calculate that. So let's start. If at any point of time you feel any problem, please just unmute yourself and just inform me. Okay, so let's start. Spotlight. Okay. So almost 82 participants has joined. Fine. See, today's topic is related to measurement. Measurement okay. Okay. My internet connection was just lost for a bit. Now, can you hear me properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, this is the measurement we are trying to discuss today. But in this second year, first semester, a detailed course on measurement is there. So there is no point giving those details, which will be discussed later in your second year first semester course. There is no point discussing those things. So we'll just I'll try to give you some basic idea or initial idea. Usually, due to lack of time, we omit them, but they are very important regarding the overall knowledge of what is measurement. Say, whenever you are trying to measure something, for example, if we talk about the electrical quantities, say you are trying to measure a current. So a current is flowing through and you are trying to measure the current. So how can you measure? You can measure it using, say, an ammeter. But you can measure it using an ammeter, but the thing is, how do you know that the ammeter, the reading of the ammeter is correct? We expect that those things, those, say, ammeter, they are usually correctly made, properly made, and the technical term related to that is called the calibration. So if your ammeter is calibrated, then you will have the true reading of that. Probably in your first year electrical Shostik Kanjilal is saying that he cannot hear. Is it? Okay, now it's okay, he's saying. Okay, okay, okay. Let us start the video. Okay. So now, fine. So now, how can you know that that particular ammeter will give you the proper reading it is difficult to know. But if your ammeter is, say, calibrated, then you can say that you can expect that your reading will be correct. So now how to make that ammeter reading correct? That means, or simply asking. And that's why you must understand two terms. One is called the traceability. This term is called the traceability, and also the, say, the uncertainty. There are other terms you should know. I'll just discuss them also. But in your, say, 11-12 course, you have just taught about measurement and different types of errors. And you know that, for example, say 1 meter standard, there are SI system, and for 1 meter standard, what is 1 meter standard? That is one platinum iridium rod. It is given nowadays. The length standard is somewhat different, but okay, our old one, let us consider that. That means, say, we can have one very accurately made 1 meter scale, 1 meter rod, and comparing with that rod, we can say another object is of 1 meter length. So this is the way we can compare. And traceability means, say, international, there exists one international body. What is the structure of that measuring or measurement standard organizations? So this is the pyramid, and you can see, let us take one spotlight. Okay, here you can see, this is the highest apex body. Apex body, we call it the international standard. For example, there initially it was ISO, okay, International Standardization Organization, okay. And that ISO standard, now there are so many different organizations for the standard, international standard, but we call them international standard. For example, the same organization that is responsible for giving us the calibration of ammeter, it is not the same for the food safety. Okay, so that is why initially it was the only one apex body. Now nowadays there are different, but the point is, the basic idea is, there exists one international body that they actually prepared the international standard. ISO head office is at Geneva. Now under that, all different countries, they're the member of that international body, and that international body creates and maintains the international standards. And they actually, those standards, international standards, are then actually calibrated or compared to the national standards. For example, there exist national standards in India, there may be in other countries also, in America, England, wherever. So national standards, we call them national standards, are traceable to international standard. That means, loosely speaking, say national standard, let us say an ammeter, okay. So that national standard ammeter, that is calibrated with respect to international standard. And say earlier days, there at Delhi, at New Delhi, there exists the National Physical Laboratory. That National Physical Laboratory holds all the standards. Nowadays, National Physical Laboratory is something, okay, their responsibility is reduced, and enable throughout India. So national standard, basically say that standard is traceable to international standard. Again, I am repeating, that means loosely that that ammeter, that national standard, say ammeter, that is actually calibrated with respect to the international standard. Now that national standard, say that is the National Physical Laboratory. For the time being, let us assume that. So under that lab, there exist several other regional labs. For example, in Kolkata, we have Eastern Regional Testing Lab, ERTL. So that ERTL is under that national. So the reference standard, national standard, with respect to that, we prepare some reference standard. They are almost similar to that national standard, but they are actually calibrated with respect to national standard, and they are distributed over different labs. For example, ERTL in Kolkata at Salt Lake, Sector 5, that ERTL office is there. So reference standard is maintained there. And then again, Under that lab, they actually calibrate different working standards. For example, in our lab also, we have different standards. I mean, some calibrated meters. So that calibration we usually perform under ERTL. So our ammeter, say this working standard, that is traceable to that reference standard, that is again traceable to national standard, that is again traceable to international standard. So the traceability is actually passing through different layers, and all the equipment calibrated in this way, they are actually, we call them traceable to the international standard with different grades of accuracy. How traceability we can represent that mathematical formula or the numerical values, that is different thing, but I am just trying to indicate the flow of that traceability. And again, some industry, for example, say some can you remember one name of one company that you have used the ammeter in your lab? Say Automatic Electric. So Automatic Electric, they are also making some. They are also making, okay, they are also making those. I have just muted all. Okay, so if you want to say something, we have to write that in the chat box. Okay, so now the thing is, say that in industry measurement, that means say that the meter manufacturer, say at Automatic Electric, they are making one ammeter. Then how do they know that their ammeter is correct? They can approach that lab, for example, their instrument, that will be calibrated with the working standards, either, or they can also approach ERTL, that means the reference standard. Okay, usually industrial directly, they should not approach the national standard, the procedure, the law, that will not allow you, but there are possibilities are there. But the thing is, the basic idea is, for example, say the working standard, that means the working ammeter you are using in the lab, that has to be calibrated. Then only you know that your ammeter is measurement, or the laboratory, or say some practical measurement, that will be calibrated in some lab or with respect to some working standard. Working standard is calibrated with respect to some reference standard. Reference standard means they are which are under the, say, purview of the national labs. Okay, so for example, regional labs. In fact, nowadays, as the organizational structure changes, our lab, that means our university lab, can also go under the national standard directly. Okay, but usually if we think in this way, it will be easier for you to understand. So the working ammeter, that will be calibrated with respect to working standard. Working standard will be calibrated with respect to, say, the reference standard. For example, say ERTL lab, regional labs. Then that those references in ERTL, they will be calibrated with respect to national standard in, say, National Physical Laboratory. They are holding some. Those national standards, they are calibrated with respect to international standard. So what is the actual, in a nutshell, the measurement traceability? That is the property, that means that is the property of a measurement result, whereby the result can be related to a reference. If you cannot compare your result with some reference, you do not know whether that is correct or not. That can be related to a reference through a documented unbroken chain. Unbroken chain means that industrial measurement, dash is traceable to working standard, that standard is traceable to reference, that is national standard, and finally that is international standard. So whenever you are calibrated one ammeter, even in your, say, lab or in practical industry, then you are actually calibrating that with respect to some international standard, and that is called the traceability. Unbroken change of calibrations, each contributing to the measurement uncertainty. That is very common thing. Measurement uncertainty means now you think about the errors. For example, say this the first instrument, that is the international standard. Say that is the 100% accurate. Then the national standard, if you compare that, there will be some fractional error. Say for example, say reference standard with respect to this, that will have some error. So once you go and downward, your uncertainty, or you can say the error, increases. Why? Because you are just calibrating more and more number of times with different instruments. So that is why your uncertainty increases bottom line. That means if you are having the national standard, then your uncertainty is very less. Then if you are talking about reference standard, uncertainty is slightly higher. There, slightly higher, and again the maximum uncertainty will be there. But you have to calibrate that in such a way, or you have to manufacture the meter or the instrument in such a way that your uncertainty or the error is within the acceptable limit. That is the catch. So now you should know different terms. These terms are very important in from the point of view of your interview. Okay, so these terms are, say, accuracy, error, trueness, bias, precision, repeatability, reproducibility, and uncertainty. Okay, there are many terms. Usually students, they use them synonymously, but they are not actually same. So that is why these terms you should keep in your mind. The definition should you should know, so that in interview, if asked what is the difference between repeatability and reproducibility, or if you are given some example, cited some example, and you are asked, tell me what is the property of the instrument indicated by this, is it repeatability or reproducibility or precision or something like that. So all those terms, maybe some of these terms may be similar to you, but they are not actually similar. First, the accuracy. That is very common term. Accuracy means the closeness of the your measured value and the actual one. And usually accuracy, if you measure once, then you have accuracy for that measurement. If you measure the same thing for 10 times, for example, say you are measuring the same current. Usually in your 11-12 lab, probably you have just performed the experiment of finding out density. So it is not like that you measured density only once. You measured density thrice and you took the average of that. So average density, that means you are measuring not only once, so many times. So accuracy is usually indicated for each measurement. For example, if you measure 10 times, there will be 10 accuracies for each measurement. Okay. Error, that is, we can say the inverse of that accuracy. That means error is the difference. That means the closeness is the accuracy, how close it is, but maybe you can say they are more or less same, in the sense, if you know accuracy, you can understand what is the error, you can find out what is the error, or vice versa. That means if you know error, you can find out what is the accuracy. But error means it is the difference between true value and your measured value. And this term, I am just highlighting this term, it is called measurand. Measurand means the quantity being measured. These are the terms usually we use. That is why you should know these terms. Okay. Trueness, I told you, trueness is similar to accuracy, but accuracy is for the individual reading. And if you take the average of 10 readings, I told you that if you measure 10 times, then your accuracy will be 10. 10 accuracies for each measurement you will find. Now trueness means if you measure 10 times and take the average of that. Say you have measured the current 10 times and take the average of that. We just assume that your average reading is, or your reading is, say, average of those 10 readings. So what is the trueness? Trueness will be the closeness of that average value with the actual value. So trueness is similar to accuracy, but trueness is, you can say, the average of. And bias means the difference between that. So bias is basically similar to error, only for a large number of measurements. That means if you just take that 10 readings, the average of 10 readings is your reading that you will take, and the difference with that true value and your average reading is the bias. If you take only one reading, then we call the difference as error. But if we take that for that average of 10 readings, then we call them bias. Okay. And precision. Usually precision and accuracy, they are misunderstood. Precision and accuracy, they are not same. Precision is the closeness of agreement for different measurements under same conditions. For example, you are say measuring a current 5 ampere. Now 5 ampere current, your ammeter may not be able to show you exact 5 ampere. Say it is a 5.1. Now precision means, say that your accuracy means 5.1 and 5, the difference is your error. Okay. And it is that difference will give you the accuracy. You can say the percentage error or accuracy in terms of percentage. But precision is if you measure the same current using the same instrument, say 10 times. So how close are those measurements? If they are close, then we say those instrument that is very precise. Okay. So precision has something to repeatability. And what is that repeatability? So repeatability is simply the precision. So the precision, we can explain precision in two ways. One is called the repeatability and reproducibility. Repeatability means all the conditions remain same and the person who is measuring is also same, and you are measuring the same quantity using the same instrument. You know that every time the reading will not be same. Why? For example, say you are measuring 5 ampere. I told you that your instrument that is showing say 5.1 ampere. There is a possibility of human intervention and human error. And that error can vary in different runs. For example, if your pointer is in between two graduations, two markings, in between that your scale is placed. So by eye estimation, initially say you may assume that 5.1, later you can find out say 5.11. So with different runs, keeping all the conditions same, the reading may be different because of different uncontrollable conditions. Okay, there can be some say some variation in some parameters. Okay, so if you make the same thing, all the say conditions remaining same, if you measure one particular quantity, the reading can be different. So that repeatability means it is the precision for that condition. And reproducibility means you are measuring the same quantity using the same method, but your different equipment and different operator. For example, reproducibility means the say your company, one company is making say ammeters. What is the repeatability of that one particular instrument, one particular ammeter? That means you are using the same ammeter, conditions are same, and same current is flowing through. You are measuring the same current using the same ammeter repeatedly. Same 5 ampere you are measuring repeatedly. Will that be same? That is measured by repeatability. Now that company will not produce only one ammeter. Say they are producing say 100 ammeters. So for 100 ammeters, reproducibility means the same 5 ampere current you will measure using different ammeters. Maybe your operators are also different. So that is called the reproducibility, the ability to reproduce the same result. And uncertainty is related to the representation of error. For example, you know that for a particular measurement, your error is say something. Say for example, say 5 ampere is your true value and you have measured 5.1. So your error is say 0.1. Now for the next time if you measure, there is no guarantee that your result will be exactly 5.1. So you cannot say every time your error will be say 0.1. It is not possible. It is not actually the error that will fluctuate. Define one statistical term that is called uncertainty. It actually gives you the range within which your result may vary, and that is actually known from the characteristic of the instrument. I told you the term calibration. During calibration, all those parameters, they are investigated. They will, after calibration, the calibration report will say you whether the ammeter is accurate, how much it is accurate, and what is the uncertainty range. That means if it is saying that your current is 5.1, within which bound the actual value should lie. Okay, because I am now saying that your assume that your current is 5 ampere, but before measurement you don't have any idea that what is your accurate exact value of the current. So how can you find out the error? So that is why some statistical analysis has to be done. Because if you measure say 5.1, say 10 times, 5.15, 5.11, 5.05, and so on. So from that measurement, by statistical analysis, you have to find out what is the error. And we call them say bias, or we represent them in terms of uncertainty. Let us have some pictorial representation of that. See, this is the dartboard analogy. See, you know that the bullseye means the center. So here, the leftmost one, that indicates the very high accuracy and very high precision. Very high accuracy and very high precision means, high accuracy means say our true value is the central one. So the darts, they are hitting the central position. That means they are actually hitting the correct value. So that is, it is highly accurate. And also all of them are close enough. That means if you measure repeatedly, those values are close enough. That means it is high accuracy as well as high precision. There, the next second one. See, all those values, they are off-centered. That means there. That means the difference is high. Difference is high, but it is low. That means it is low accuracy. Here, the true value is central value, and they are measuring like this. So therefore, there exists some difference. So that is, it is not accurate, but it is highly precise. It is having high precision. Why? Because they're all of those measured value, they are close enough. The third one, it is say high accuracy. They are also very close to the central thing, but they are all different. So it is high accurate, accuracy is high, highly accurate, but low precision. And there they are off centered quite a bit, and also they are not say at the hitting at the same point. They are say at different scattered at different positions. So we say that they are of low accuracy and low precision. So these are the things, these are the basic idea of the accuracy and precision. Okay. So now this one. So if we increase the trueness and increasing the precision, so in the diagonal position, it is just like that. See, the precision is low, even accuracy is low. So it is just like this, the dartboard. See, they are scattered. Again, this position means trueness is high, but precision is low. Trueness is high, precision is low means they are actually close to say the central position, but they are scattered. And there, this one, it is having increasing precision, but accuracy is low. That means trueness is low. That means it is far away from the center, far away from the true value, but at the same time, it is having their values are close enough. Their values are close enough. Ahon is saying, sir, what are the criteria of getting low or high precision of any galvanometer? Okay, that depends on the structure and the sources of error of the galvanometer. Okay, in the second year first semester, the structure of the galvanometers, different types of galvanometers, and their sources of error, they will be discussed. Okay. I am giving you the basic idea so that when those things are taught, the basic philosophy of discussing that you can understand. Okay. Okay. So now, so the bias is high, but the thing is they are highly precise. And this one is the best choice. That means high value of accuracy and high precision. So that means those values are close to the central bullseye, and also they are actually we can say the close enough to close enough from each other so that the precision is high. Okay, so now coming into the instrument part, say these okay, so different types of instruments are there. So this is the electrical instruments. We can classify them. I have taken all those things from internet. Okay, so that electrical instrument, they are actually can be classified into two categories: absolute and secondary instruments. Absolute instrument means they actually do not require any calibration. It is very astonishing fact. That means say one ammeter, scale is graduated and you can find you can measure the current, but we do not require any calibration. Then how do you know that reading is correct? So there are absolute instruments, or we can say them we can call them primary instrument or your absolute instrument. They do not require any calibration. Means if you if you try to measure something using that, some other parameters, physical dimensions, some other things, if you know them, you can measure the exact value. For example, in your old syllabus, the tangent galvanometer, probably you have heard of tangent galvanometer. That tangent galvanometer is an absolute instrument. Why? Because say how that galvanometer measures the current. Tangent galvanometer, it actually measures the deflection of the say one magnetic needle. It actually measures the deflection of the magnetic needle, and that magnetic needle, that deflection, tangent of that deflection, and the Earth's horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field, and coil diameter, coil radius, say coil number of turns, etc. Those parameters are that constitute the meter constant. So your current I will be proportional to say tangent of theta. So directly you are actually not measuring the current, you are actually measuring the deflection. And that deflection, if that scale is correct, then from that deflecting and deflection angle and by some physical parameters, if you know, then you can readily get the current. So you do not have to measure the or calibrate the instrument. Binoy Rajak is saying our secondary instruments are followed by absolute one. Followed by means, are you trying to say that they are calibrated using the primary one? Okay, one option is that, but not always. There are standard meters. And they can be the secondary instrument. They can be calibrated in terms of the standard meters. That standard meters may not be always a absolute instrument. May not be. Okay, but maybe one absolute one. Okay, may or may not be. So now, so that is absolute instrument and secondary instrument. They apparently you may feel that they operate on the same principle. For example, one deflecting type ammeter, the usual ammeter you use. So how do you measure the current? In the scale, it is written 0 ampere, 1 ampere, 2 ampere, 3 ampere, and the pointer, that is, you just locate the position of the pointer and you can measure the current. But how do you know that the current, when it is 1 ampere, the pointer will just be stationary there? That requires the calibration. Even if you know those parameters of the dimension of the other parameters of the instrument properly, then also you can find out by using the governing equation, you can find out the value of current. But that is not always possible to exactly know the value of the other things. That is why we require calibration. If you know exactly every bit and piece of that particular instrument very accurately, then all the instruments we can say they are absolute. But that is not possible for all of the cases. because it is not possible. So that if you are just making one coil, the number of turn, it is very difficult to make the number of turns integral or exact the value of the number of turns or the exact diameter. Okay, because the wires have thicknesses and other things. So that is why whatever your governing equation, there will be some deviation from that governing equation because of the practical limitations. So that is why, because you know that, for example, you know from your Biot-Savart law, what is the magnetic field at the center of a current carrying coil. But if you are placing one magnet at the center, what is the guarantee that the entire thing that will that will have only at the central position? That means the magnetic needle should be one point then. That is not physically possible. So that is why, even though there exist some governing equations, but it is not possible to know every information accurately for any instrument. So that is why we require calibration. Shorjo is saying, can the classification between absolute and secondary instrument be applied in case of non-electrical instruments? Can the classification between absolute? Yes. There, that non-electrical instrument, that can be done. That can be done. But there are certain mechanical instruments or chemical that you can do that. But usually we most of the cases that calibration is related to electrical or electromechanical, most of the cases. Okay, yes, simple ruler can be called an absolute instrument. Yes, but the thing is there all other scales, then all the ruler, that should be one absolute instrument. So there is no point of classifying them in terms of absolute and secondary. Okay, where the this classification has some meaning, then usually we should apply them. Otherwise, for that one simple ruler, that is not required actually. Pushpal is saying, what was the name of the instrument with respect to which the secondary instrument is calibrated? Okay, that is called the standard instrument. I told you, I have just shown you one this pyramid, traceability pyramid. On the basis of that, there may be one standard ammeter at the say one international laboratory. That laboratory will calibrate other ammeters with respect to that. Then again, the traceability goes on the other layers. So the secondary instruments, they can be classified as analog and digital. Digital instruments, they are not okay for the time being. After digital signal processing, you just learn, then you can just know what is a digital instrument. We'll discuss later on in the second semester probably. And analog instrument, most of the cases in this particular course, we'll discuss about analog instruments. And they are deflecting type and null deflection. Null deflection means, for example, one galvanometer is also null deflection. You have heard of what should I say? Okay, I just distracted by my daughter. Okay, a bit. Okay. Now the thing is, one null deflection you have heard in Wheatstone bridge. In Wheatstone bridge, how do you find out the unknown resistance, the value of unknown resistance? The method is to you just balance the bridge. And how do you know your bridge is balanced? There exists one galvanometer that will show null, and those type of measurement is also required. That means in that case, very interesting, you can see there is no such value that is required. That means whenever we say that you are measuring current, that means you are interested about the value of current. But think about that galvanometer used in the Wheatstone bridge. We are not interested about the value it shows. If it shows some value other than 0, we know that the bridge is unbalanced. So that exact value, what is that value, is not important. We are interested in the showing the null condition. So that is why the same instrument, the purpose of use is somewhat different. Okay. Nirmallo Nondi, it is saying, sir, any type of mechanical instrument used to calibrate the tangent galvanometer and mechanical, okay, say one or two things you can think of. See that angle measurement, that protect. That means that actually you require some mechanical calibration. Otherwise, how do you measure the angle of deflection correctly? Okay. Also, the diameter or area of those mechanical measurements or mechanical dimension measurements are required. Otherwise, you cannot have the exact equation of the governing equation of the machine or instrument. So, deflecting instrument will mainly discuss about those deflecting instruments. That can be also classified into indicating, integrating, and recording. Recording means, say, for example, one electronic seismograph or ECG machine. They are actually recording something, recording a pattern with respect to time. In some sense, your oscilloscope is also can be used as a recording if the facility is there. If it is digital storage oscilloscope, you can record something. So recording type instruments, they are very common to you. ECG waveform, ECG machine, say seismogram, okay. Those machines are actually recording type. Integrating type means your, say, household energy meters. Okay, the CSC meters or ACD meters, electrical meters, they are actually that integrating type. They actually integrates. That means adding up. They are adding up the energy consumption in each day, in each instant. Okay, at each instant. So therefore, that they are called the integrating type. But mostly in our laboratory we use, or in our day-to-day life in industry we use indicating type instruments. Indicating type. That means ammeter, voltmeter, wattmeter, those things. Kollol Datta has said, asked one question, that is, can we say a tangent galvanometer is an example of both absolute and deflecting instrument? Yes, we can say. We can say. But absolute and deflecting, actually we are not going to discuss absolute. There are different types of absolute instrument. We have not discussed them. Okay, so that is why I have just shown there. That means secondary. So some classification under secondary, they are also valid for absolute, but we are not interested in construction of the absolute instrument. That is why we are usually interested in the secondary type instrument. Why? Because of the traceability. That is the traceability or the calibration facility is there. Then we do not require always the absolute instrument to calibrate the other instruments. Okay. That is why I have not shown the classifications of absolute instrument. That is not required. Okay. So there. So now you can see that indicating type instrument that can be classified into three categories again. One is called moving coil, moving iron, and induction type. Moving coil is PMM. So that means your old that D'Arsonval galvanometer. Probably you have heard of this name, D'Arsonval galvanometer, that was discussed in your 11-12 course. Okay, physics course. That is a D'Arsonval galvanometer. That galvanometer we call them as the PMMC. PMMC is the abbreviation of permanent magnet moving coil instrument. Another is called the dynamometer type. The actual name is electrodynamometer. I'll just explain the name, why it is termed like electrodynamometer. I'll explain. And second one is moving iron. Moving iron means your coil is fixed, one iron piece will move. Usually in the moving coil, magnet is fixed, coil will move, and you have the pointer linked with the coil. So moving coil means magnet fixed, coil will move. Moving iron means a coil is fixed, some iron piece that will move. And induction type means the torque will be produced by some induction or the flux interaction between two coils. Okay, the same in the induction type instrument, there's the energy meter and other instruments are there. So induction type instrument, nowadays we are not interested in that. Nowadays moving coil, moving iron, they are the main things. Okay. So moving coil and moving iron instrument we'll discuss in details. One thing, say moving coil PMMC, that D'Arsonval galvanometer, usually those instruments they measure the direct current quantities. If you give AC in D'Arsonval galvanometer, there is so what will happen? You know, probably you know the answer. If you give say AC to a D'Arsonval galvanometer, what will be the reading? The reading will be 0 if that AC is symmetric about the time axis. The average value of AC is 0. So basically your moving coil instrument, that PMMC particularly, PMMC gives you the average value. That means PMMC that is useful for measurement of DC. These things are asked in your easy interviews. Okay, very tough core interview there will be something different, but for easy interviews those things will be asked. That means which instrument you can use for measurement of DC, which instrument you should use for AC measurement, both AC and DC measurement, just like that. Okay, so PMMC is for DC, moving iron is for AC, but that value will be different. But dynamometer type instrument, both AC and DC. So you can think of this thing. I'll repeat again. For DC measurement only, PMMC has to be used. For AC, we usually use moving iron instrument, and moving iron instrument can also measure DC, but that instrument to be calibrated under DC then. The same instrument, the 5 ampere DC and 5 ampere AC for moving iron, they will not show you the same value. That means one moving iron ammeter, if 5 ampere DC is flown and 5 ampere AC is flown, then the reading will not be same. But that will be same for dynamometer type instrument. So dynamometer type instruments can be used for both AC and DC. এগুলো মনে রাখবে, ওকে? এগুলো এক্সামে আসবে বলেই বলা, এগুলো ইন্টারভিউতে জিজ্ঞেস করে। Okay, so now let us discuss this. That means the first one, that is the say moving coil or PMMC instrument. This is the basic structure. Let us take that highlighter or spotlight again. This. So this is the coil and this is a magnet. So magnet is a horseshoe magnet and that is fixed. This portion, just like this curved portion, they are actually made in such a way so that the flux is radial. So radial flux means it is always say perpendicular to the area vector of the coil. So therefore your torque will be, you know that torque will be NBIA, that is IA cross B, that is the torque acting on a current carrying coil. So that torque will be just acting on it, and these two, the top one and this bottom one, this one and this bottom one, they are the spring. So whenever the deflecting torque acts on the coil, coil will rotate, and as in the D'Arsonval galvanometer, this coil will rotate means the spring will just have some rotation. So if you rotate the spring will give you some opposing torque. So under equilibrium, your deflecting torque and your spring torque, they will be same. So pointer will be stationary at some point. And you can have the governing equation so that your NBIA, that will be your C theta. So therefore you can have theta versus I relation. So from knowing theta, you can identify what is the current flowing through the coil. This is the very easy thing. In D'Arsonval galvanometer, you are not using the pointer. You are going to use some light and scale arrangement. So therefore the sensitivity increases. That is the other thing. Okay, but the basic idea of the moving iron is you have one permanent magnet. This is the permanent magnet, and there exists some coil, And when current flows through the coil, there will be deflecting torque. Deflecting torque makes this particular coil rotating. When the coil rotates, the spring will also get having some torsional torque, and therefore it will oppose that, and therefore at equilibrium your deflecting torque and spring torque balances, and the pointer becomes stationary. And the calibration procedure, that job is to graduate the scale in such a way that the pointer becomes stationary at proper position. That is the purpose of calibration. Better view you can find out here. See, this is that instrument. So for example, this is a look from the outer side. See the scale. This is the scale. In many instruments, you can have inbuilt shunt. Inbuilt shunt, so therefore it can be used for different scale. You can see there are two scales, from 0 to 500 milliampere and also 0 to 50. The two terminals are also there. See, 0, 50, 500. If you connect it between 0 and 50, and if you take from 0 and 500, you have to take the higher scale. And what is the arrangement in between? Inside there exists some shunt connected from 0 to 500 milliampere. That means a shunt is connected. So shunt is such that even though your current is say 500, so your total current through the galvanometer coil will be 50 milliampere, just like that. That is the shunt arrangement I am not talking about. See there. So these are the things. These are the different portions. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is the coil. I have shown you the coil. This is the coil. 2, this is the horseshoe magnet that is producing the magnetic field. Then 3 is that core. That core is actually increasing the flux density, so that torque increases. And also it is cylindrical shape, so that your flux lines becomes perpendicular. And 4 is this one. 4 is the spring. There is two springs, one at the top, other is the bottom. Bottom spring is not visible in this figure. 5 is the scale, 6 is the pointer, and 7 is this knob, is called the zero adjustment knob. If you just rotate this knob 7, that the zero, if the pointer is slightly away from the 0, you can adjust the offset error by zero adjustment. And 8 and 9 are the two terminals through which the current one is coming out, just like that. Okay, no more questions here. The second one is the moving iron. Details of moving iron that will be discussed. That's why I am just giving you only the basic idea, not the details of the structure. Moving iron means the basic thing is that coil will be fixed. Here, this is the coil. You can see this is the cross section of the coil. These portions are the conductors. These portions, they are conductors or the turns of the coil. I have shown you one YouTube link. This is an YouTube link. You can see that video, this YouTube link, that video will give you some inside picture of the moving iron instrument. Okay, this is the schematic representation of that. This is the pointer, and this portion, this oval shaped thing, that is a metal or iron piece. So what happens is that whenever current flows to the coil, that particular iron piece will be attracted by this magnetic field, and by that attraction, what happens, that vein will move towards the magnetic field, and the pointer attached to the vein, that will move. And the governing equation will show you that the deflection, okay, the deflection will be proportional to the square of the current. So your scale will be slightly non-linear. There are ways to make that scale linear that will be discussed later. Right now I am not discussing that, but you can see the scale is not a perfectly linear one. It is a non-linear scale, because current earlier in moving coil PMMC instrument, it was I proportional to theta, but here the deflecting torque or the angle of deflection will be proportional to I square. So it is not a linear one. See, I have just shown you that moving iron instrument that can be classified into two categories. One is called the attraction type, other is called the repulsion type. That earlier one, that is the attraction type, this one the repulsion type. Repulsion type means this one, the two veins are there, one repels other. So that is why it is the basic principle is same. Basic principle, what is that? When current flows through, coil is fixed, coil will produce some magnetic field, and that magnetic field will attract or repel some magnetic or iron piece. The pointer will be attached to the iron piece, so there will be some deflection. Okay, some reading will be obtained. Again, the same spring control is there. And the electrodynamometer type means because of some electrical interaction, some mechanical movement will be produced. That is very important here. Some general idea you must have, because that is one of the important things. Not the dynamometer type instrument. The basic idea of interaction. That means if two flux interacts, what will be the result? See, there are two coils. In fact, there are three coils. Two coils, they are same basically, and this one is the central one. Now what happens if current flows through all these coils? So all of them, they will produce some magnetic field. So those magnetic field, they will interact and some deflecting torque will be produced. This we have to understand clearly. That means why, if two flux, they will interact, then what does it mean first, and why there will be some torque. First, the interaction of two flux means flux will be produced by some coils, and if two fluxes interact, then it means those two coils, they are linked, magnetically coupled. That means there exists some mutual coupling between them. One flux links the other and the vice versa. That means the term that the two fluxes, they interact. Now, what will be the result of that? We will discuss. So, but now let us see. Probably you have heard of the term wattmeter. Wattmeters are basically these dynamometer type instruments. See, these are the structure. This is one coil, the square one, this is one coil. Pointer is connected to that, and there are other two coils. So basic structure is for dynamometer fixed coils, two sets of fixed coils. These larger coils, they are fixed coils, and this one, the pointer attached to it, that is the moving coil. So one set of coils, that is the fixed coil, and another coil is the moving coil. These are the thing. And if these two coils, see this coil, that will produce some flux, this square coil, moving coil, that will produce some flux, and by interaction of those two flux, some deflecting torque will be produced. And because of the deflecting torque, this particular moving coil, that will try to rotate, and the pointer will also rotate. And what is the purpose? Purpose is we have to find out the relation between the current and the deflecting torque. This is the schematic. So this is two coils. These two coils are same. This left one and this one, they are the two fixed coils, and one is called the moving coil, and the pointer is connected to the moving coil. What will happen whenever the current flows? These two some flux, those two flux, moving coil and they will produce some torque. And in wattmeter, this fixed coil, they are actually the current coil. Current coils, because of the fact that fixed coil means they will not move, so we can place thicker wire there, because moving system, we cannot make them heavy, then your system becomes not very reliable. Heavy system, if it tries to move, then there are different types of frictional force, etc., that will be very difficult to remove. So our moving system should be very light. So the coil placed on the moving coil should be very light, very thin. Thin coil means it is unable to carry high amount of current, because high amount of current that will create a very large amount of heat, because thin wire means resistance is high. High resistance means I square R heating will be high if you try to force high current through the thin coils. These are the things that you should know, because during your course all those details it is very difficult to tell you. Now we have got some time, that's why we are discussing like that. That is why those moving system that should be made of very thin wires. In interviews, in viva voces, these type of questions are asked. For example, say you are given two coils. You are asked that, okay, tell me which one is the moving system coil and which one is the fixed system coil. Then by seeing the wire gauge, that means thickness of the wire, you have to identify which one should be the fixed one. Thicker will be the fixed one. Okay, just like that. In terms of your DC machines also, which winding is for the armature and which one for the field, just like that. আমি একটু চা খেলে নিশ্চয়ই তোমরা আপত্তি করবে না? Okay, so now this is one the schematic of the watt meter. See, this is the schematic of watt meter. The two coils, they are the control spring. Sorry, they are the, say, fixed coils, and this the square coil, that is the moving coil, and this is the control spring, just like that. So your voltage coil is your the moving coil. Voltage coil, because voltage coil current is very small, voltage coil resistance is very high, so voltage coil current in watt meter is very small, so it is just like that. Details of the watt meter overview. Now the mathematics part. See what is there. The torque equation. So deflecting torque is a TD. We represent that deflecting torque as TD. Now, if you are using control instrument, control spring instrument, then your control torque will be, your TC will be equal to K into theta. That means proportional to theta. K is your spring constant, torsional constant. And then total energy stored in the magnetic field, that is known to you, but you have to remember that. So what is that? Energy E is half Li square. Say there are two coils, so one fixed and one moving. Sir, in DC machine, you said one for armature and one for the field winding. Okay, field winding. Field winding means that winding that produces a magnetic field for the machine. I told you, we just say they are the electrical machines, but they are actually magnetic machines. Why? This is the reason. This is a very basic thing. That means if two fluxes interact, why there will be some torque? Why? That is the reason. Okay. So now, if you have some fixed or some moving coil, if you make all the system fixed, there won't be any possibility of this derivation will be not true. Why? Because we are that can move. So there are two coils, two sets of coils, that there one is fixed, another is moving. So if there is no such moving system, then this derivation will fail. We are discussing, whenever talking about the deflecting torque, that means we assume that there is a possibility of some movement, of some rotation. Okay. So now, so it is the energy is half Li square in a coil. Half Li square is the stored energy in a magnetic coil. So your fixed coil, F for fixed, M for moving. Okay. So half Li square is the fixed coil energy. Half Lim square is the moving coil current, and energy of the moving, Im is the moving coil current. So therefore, this is the energy of the moving coil system. and they are having some mutual coupling. Otherwise, the two flux will not interact. So therefore, IF Im into M. Probably this energy equation is known to you. If it is known to you, please say yes in the chat box. If not, say no. But this should be known to you. These are the very known thing. Is it known to you? That means energy E is half Li square plus half L. Someone is saying it is no. Okay. Don't worry. For this type of discussion, let us have energy. Okay. Okay. You know that these first two terms. I know that you should know these first two terms. The problematic term is the third one. Okay. Then I'll discuss. I'll just show you, give you the note on that. It is not very difficult thing. Just like one derivation, just like you have derived that energy stored in a coil as the half Li square, just like that. If you just assume that mutual coupling, then another extra term will be there. The same way, if you integrate for the energy, IF Im into M, that will come. I'll show you the derivation. Okay, but also you can find out in Google also. I'll show you the derivation. You just please contact research sir. I'll just give you this this PPT. Okay, and along with that, I'll just give you the derivation of this equation. That means if you have only a single coil, no mutual coupling, it will be half Li square only. If you have two coils, only no mutual coupling, then half L1 I1 square plus half L2 I2 square. If two coils with mutual coupling, your energy will be like this: half L1 I1 square plus half L2 I2 square plus I1 I2 into M. M is the mutual coupling. Okay, for the time being, assume that this is the energy. Now, if you have torque T and one system rotates by an angle d theta, so what is the incremental energy required? Torque into d theta. You know that for rotating system, work done is torque into d theta. That is the torque. That is the work done. So therefore, if your work done is T into d theta, that will be your change in energy. Because where from the torque will be generated? Because from energy balance, that mechanical work will be extracted from the electrical energy. So therefore, this is the electrical energy, and Td into d theta will be dE. So basically, deflecting torque is your dE d theta. For example, in your linear version, you know from your physics course that if your internal energy is U, so what is the force? It will be derivative of U, that is minus du dx is the force. The same thing, the magnitude, I have just omitted the minus sign. It is not required here because we are trying to find out the magnitude of the torque. So therefore, your torque is basically dE d theta. Because what is that? Because E is the energy. Here, linear force will not be developed. Couple will be there. So net force will be 0. So the change in internal energy will be attributed because of the torque. So it is the Td into d theta is dE. So Td is basically dE d theta. Just like your work energy principle equation. That means change in your internal energy with respect to x, derivative of that is Td. No. Shaunadeep is saying this derivative is not valid. No. I'll show you. Those currents are not constant. What does it mean? I'll just explaining. It is valid also for AC. Why it is valid? I am explaining. Just listen to it. See here, Td is d d theta. So now d d theta means, in our case, what is the physical meaning of theta here? That means rotation of the coil. Now, say you are using one ammeter and you are trying to measure current. So, if the current flowing, the current flowing through the meter, and the pointer deflects, will the current will change? Whether there will be any change in the current, will the current change? No, because we are measuring the current. For example, say you are using one ammeter to measure current. Due to the rotation, the deflection of the pointer of the ammeter, will there be any effect of the deflection on the current flowing through the ammeter? No, the current we are measuring, that is governed by the electrical circuit. So by mechanical movement of the coil, there should not be any effect on the current. So that is why you have a feeling that I am assuming current as constant. It is not so. Why it is taking as constant? Because I am just differentiating with respect to theta. For practical purposes, for mechanical movement, there should not be any effect on the current that you are trying to measure. That is why I have taken IF as constant here. So half IF square dl d theta plus high Im square dl d theta. But if the coil rotates, then for the self-inductance, that is independent of theta, self-inductance will not again vary. If a coil rotates and in different position, different orientation, the self-inductance remains same if the constructional feature remains same. So for the fixed and moving coils, all other parameters remain same. So therefore, dl d theta is 0. So first two terms is 0. So first two terms, they are 0. So the third term remains there, IF Im into dm d theta. So deflecting torque for any, if two coils, they are producing mutually linked flux, then, and one system is capable of moving, then the deflecting torque on that moving system will be IF into Im into dm d theta. Here, note that those things, IF and Im, they are in small letters. What does it mean? DC, valid for AC. Okay. Swarnadev, is it clear now? If you have any question, please ask. Okay. So now there's a deflecting torque. So if you have, let's say IF is IMF sin omega t and IMF say for AC. So IMM, that is the peak value for fixed coil current, and this is the sin omega t minus phi. These are two currents. Now the instantaneous deflecting torque will be IF into Im, these two current product of the two currents into dm d theta. So what is the average deflecting torque? Because this torque will be very fast, because usually our electrical quantities, they are having 50 Hz frequency more higher than that. So 50 Hz means that is very high for a moving system, 50 Hz frequency. So therefore here the average deflecting torque is the torque that will be governing torque. So TD is dm d theta, integration of this. Probably you know this term. Probably this thing is known to you. I am just showing you the spotlight here. See, this is a very common equation, that is the average value of this particular quantity. Dm d theta is, now for the time being, let us say dm d theta is constant. It is the constructional feature. That means how do we design the coils? If we make the coil in such a way that if the coil rotates, the M, the rate of change in M with respect to theta is constant. That can be done. That is a property of the designing. So we can design two coils in such a way so dm d theta is constant. So it can be taken outside. So if we integrate, after integration, you know, that is the basic thing of the RMS value calculation. So this is IMF IMM by 2 into cos phi into dm d theta. For the time being, forget about dm d theta. So it will be proportional to IFM IMM by 2. So by 2 means we can divide it as root 2 into root 2. So IFM by IMF by root 2 means it is the RMS value. So IM, that is the RMS value of the moving coil current, RMS value of the moving fixed coil current into cos phi. So here your deflecting torque is Im IF into cos phi, proportional to that. The same thing happens for other systems also. If two flux interacts, there will be some torque developed. What will be the amount of torque developed? that torque will be proportional to phi 1 into phi 2 into cos phi. What is phi 1? Phi 1 is the flux produced by the first coil. Why? Because phi 1 means it is I1. Phi is proportional to I if we assume linear relation. Then I2, phi 2 means it is the proportional to current I2. And cos phi is the phase angle difference between the two alternating quantities. Can you remember which parameter has this type of relationship in electrical quantity? Which parameter? কোন প্যারামিটারটা এরকম ইকুয়েশন করে? Power, very good. It is power. Cos phi is the power factor. So that is why that dynamometer type instrument, that can be used as the wattmeter. Why? Because you apply voltage across the fixed coils. Across the moving coil. Across the moving coil, you apply the voltage. The current of the load that will be flown through the fixed coil. So what will be the voltage that will be this moving coil current, moving coil resistance is very high. So the coil can be taken as resistive one. So the current will be in phase with voltage for the moving coil, because voltage you are applying across moving coil. That coil resistance is very high. So voltage and current for resistive circuit, they are in the same phase. So what will happen? Your current will be same phase of the voltage. So flux, if the coil is linear one, characteristic linear one, because they are all air core coil, so the characteristic will be linear one. So the coil is linear one. So what will happen? This flux that will be proportional to the in the same phase with that of the voltage, and the current flux will be proportional to the current. So therefore the two flux which are interacting, then they are having a phase difference of load power factor. I mean angle of load power factor. So that is why the deflecting torque will be proportional to the power. IF into IM. IF fixed coil. Fixed coil IF is the load current. Moving coil current is proportional to the voltage. So therefore your IF into IM into cos phi will be proportional to the power. So in that way, this circuit is measuring the this dynamometer type instrument can measure the power. Nirmalya Nandi said in the last expression, theta depends on the derivative of theta. Last expression, theta depends on the derivative of theta. Actually, what it may depend, it will depend, but the thing is we have to design that in such a way that your dm d theta is constant. Okay, your dm d theta is constant. এই রিজওয়ান আহমেদ শেখ, তুমি কি শুয়ে আছো না বসে আছো না কিভাবে আছো বলো তো? ভিডিও অফ করে। So theta is this one. Any other question? Okay. So this is the key thing. That means if two fluxes interact, then there can be a deflecting torque, and that torque will be proportional to the phi 1 into phi 2, that is RMS value of the flux, into the cos phi. This is the very key thing that I have derived. So as we have just learned it, tell me this one, a question. There is a quiz. So what current is, say 5 plus 2 sine 100 pi t ampere. This is the current. Now this current is fed to a PMMC instrument. That means I'd say D'Arsonval galvanometer. So what is কত রিডিং হবে বলতে পারবে? What will be the reading? If IT is 5 plus 2 sine 100 pi t ampere, what will be the reading? D'Arsonval galvanometer, that actually gives you the average value. So average value of this, average value of sinusoidal quantity is 0. So yes, all of you have given the correct. Shostik, Binoy, Oritro, Tomodip. Okay, 5 ampere. Okay. Now the same thing, this current is fed to a moving iron instrument, what will be the reading? A moving iron instrument, what will be the reading? Swastik Kanjilal is saying 2. No. No, no, no. No. Root 27, Swarnodip, that's correct. Root 27 will be the answer. Why? Because it will show you the RMS value, proportional to I squared. So average value will be the RMS value. Okay. So that value will be the RMS value of this current. So your moving iron instrument shows the RMS value of the current. So it will be 5. That RMS value will be 5. So 5 square plus 2 square by 2 root of that. So 2 square by 2 is 2. 5 square is 25. So 25 plus 2 is 27. Root of that is root 27. So your reading will be root 27 amperes. So moving iron and dynamometer type ammeters, voltmeter, they actually give you the RMS values. Okay. They are actually calibrated in terms of the RMS values. And for wattmeter, it is not the RMS value. Power is not it is the average power. Okay. Debargo, it is not 6.14. 5 plus root 2, not in that way. Okay. Actually, that RMS value is that you have to equate the amount of heat generated. So therefore, it will be that 5 square plus that 2 square by 2 whole root of that. Okay. Now this one. See, usually when we measure something, these things, they will be not discussed in textbooks. That's why I'm saying this. Okay, as we are having some time. So this is the, say you are measuring something. If you are using one oscilloscope, you can have the waveform. Say you have measured this type of waveform, the left one. Probably you can see. You can say have this one. So this one. You can see this is an oscillation, but there are some noise, some unwanted signal, some this type of, say, abrupt oscillations are there. Now there are circuits that can remove low frequency and high frequency. So that is low frequency component and high frequency component. Basics of that you must understand. See, there are filters that can eliminate high frequency or low frequency. That will be discussed in second year course. But for the time being, I am just trying to say that what is the physical significance of that low frequency and high frequency. Particular signal always gives the envelope or the overall shape. For example, if you are given low frequency component of a photograph of a face of a human being, then the idea is low frequency component gives you the idea that, okay, this photograph is the image of a human face, but you cannot identify. But the high frequency component means the finer details. That means, see, if it is the high frequency, all those oscillations, finer oscillations will be there. So low frequency means the overall nature of the signal. High frequency means the finer details. That means if you are to identify the person from a photograph, you require the finer details also. That means low frequency component means the overall shape of the image or overall shape of the face of the or any object. That is the low frequency component. For signal, that is the overall nature of the signal, and high frequency means is finer details. Okay, these are the things. And a human brain for visual system that operates, that behaves in a very fishy way. That means our human is the system. For example, if you are looking an image far away, so what it does is actually averages different points of the image. So you have an average image. That means if you are an image, say image of a face of a person, it is shown from far away, very long distance, say 100 meters away. So your brain will average different portions. Then you can say, okay, this image is an image of a human being, but you cannot identify that. If it is closer, then human brain identify the finer details, the positions of eye, nose, mouth, etc., etc. Then you can identify whose image is this. One thing, there are other things, not only all those instruments and others. See, now tell me, whose image is this? Who is this? It's a car image. Bolo. Who is this? Einstein. Very good. Okay. Now, let us say, see this. One answer is there. Okay. Tesla plus Einstein not. It is Einstein and you will now understand is Monroe. Now you can see if we just make that image very small. Can you see it now? It is very small now, but still, if you can see it, still, okay. Monziralam, yes, it is written in that. Okay, I'll just going to explain that. So it is, even if you just understand it earlier from the link, that doesn't make that particular thing unimportant here. So here it is, the two images, Einstein and Monroe, they are merged together. But how? That means, okay, this image was used in image processing workshop. Yes. Yes, that was that. It was my presentation lecture. Yes, probably my student just showed it to you. Who has taken that image processing workshop? Shaptorshi. Oh, আমি নিয়েছিলাম. Okay, fine. So I'm discussing this because to have you some idea about what you are going to learn in the second year also. So that's why I'm just showing this. So this image, particular image, this one, that means when you look from far, smaller image means you can assume that you are looking that image from far away. That means your brain is averaging. Means it is the low frequency component of the image. So that is why, and if we just make that image larger, it seems to be Einstein, more like Einstein, less like Monroe. That is because of the fact that this is the high frequency component is from the Einstein's image. So if you take or if you filter out different frequencies from an image, also from different signals, different information you can get. So this type of image are called hybrid images, just like this one. This is the image of a tiger plus elephant, but now as it is larger one, it is more like a leopard or tiger. If I just shrink it, make it smaller, then you can see it is just like an elephant. So that means two images, one is that this type of elephant, another is the leopard. The low frequency component means on an average that image that is taken, that is this one, and this is the finer details, finer spots and other things, finer details. If they are merged, you can have this type of images. The same thing is for the measurement instrument signals also. Visually, if we just explain this using some signals, that will be not very easy to understand. Visual impact is more. So now this type of, say, signals, if one particular signal, if you are trying to find out what is the average nature, then you should look into the low frequency component. And if you are interested in the finer details, then you should go for the high frequency component. Okay. So in your further studies, you can have this kind of a thing to carry on your further study, to do some research work. It is not a good time to start or think about your research at the first year. But if you think of doing some research, then it is not possible. You just get up one fine morning and you just start doing your research. It is not possible. So just making building that tempo or temperament of that particular research work. So I am just showing these things. But for the course, as far as your basic electrical engineering course is concerned, these things are not really required. And first year or second year is too early to start any research. But if you have the motivation, then you can start learning or studying in that way, so that you can start doing very good research later on. Because Jadavpur University students, they should be, say, all of the students should not do research. Some of the students, they will be very good, exceptional professional, top at their level. Some of them should go for good managers in different companies. They should be very good executives. Some should be in academics, in IITs, in IISc, all of they are Jadavpur University students, are faculty members, they are good researchers, even abroad. So all of this thing, aspect of the curriculum should be there. That means some should be a very good professional. They should know very well the basic, all of you should know. They should be more on the practical aspect, doing some field experts on, or some practical implementation or practical application of your knowledge in professional field. Some will go for the MBA and other things, and they will be the managers, and some of them, they will stick to the research or academics. Okay, so for all, there should be something in the course. And every student has some different motivations for different lines. So whatever may be your motivation, you just think in that way. অনেকে চায় গান বাজনা করবো পরে, ওকে, এনিথিং ফাইন, ইউ ক্যান ডু দ্যাট। অনেকে চায় যে ফিজিক্সে চলে যাবো, থিওরিটিক্যাল কিছুতে আর কি রিসার্চে চলে যাবো, ইউ ক্যান ডু দ্যাট। বাট দ্য মোটিভেশন শুড বি দেয়ার। You should not be demotivated that you should not do anything. Okay, so if you have any question, you can ask. Okay, I have unmuted you all. If you have any question, you can ask. If not, fine. Okay, standard instrument may or may not be absolute instrument. Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
Sir, I have a question, sir. The PMMC মানে পার্মানেন্ট ম্যাগনেট মুভিং কয়েলের যে স্কেলটা থাকে সেটা কি প্যারাবোলিক হয়?
পার্মানেন্ট ম্যাগনেট মুভিং কয়েল বলছো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
না, ওটা তো লিনিয়ার হবে, প্যারাবোলিক কেন হবে?
যেটার আই স্কয়ারের সাথে ভ্যারি মানে যেটা প্রপোর্শনাল মুভিং আয়রন। হ্যাঁ, মুভিং আয়রনের কথা।
হ্যাঁ, না, ওই যে আমি বললাম, ওটার কি করে, একটা পোরশন হচ্ছে প্যারাবোলিক থাকে, বুঝেছো তো? সামান্য পোরশন, বাকি পোরশনটা কায়দা করে। ওই একটা কোশ্চেন কে করেছিল আমার খেয়াল নেই, দ্যাট whether the theta is the angle of deflection, that also is some relationship with the rate of change of theta. Yes, that dmd theta into theta, that is made constant usually. So therefore it is not dmd theta is constant. It will so happen that your scale will be linear. So that is why it is not a parabolic one, it is a linear one, by proper designing of the vane system or the moving system. Auditro is astonished. Okay, Vidipto, please ask what is the Gmail ID is all about. Auditro is unaware. Maybe Auditro is in A section or so, or maybe B1. If it is only for section B, that is not do. Better I will send the PDF to SR sir. SR sir is knowing your say maybe WhatsApp ID or something like that. SR sir will post it to you. Okay. I am just sending this PDF to SR sir. Okay. So thank you. Sir, according to the recent news from UGC, will our second semester is conducted? I do not know. This is the course offered by IEEE. Okay, IEEE has nothing to do with UGC, nothing to do with Jadavpur University or so. You should ask HOD. You can ask your first year coordinators. Okay, university can say. But I am not here representing the university. This course is organized from IEEE. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I am ending the meeting.